What made the strange kid at your school so strange? He claimed to be an expert in math and science, had pages worth of random calculations that somehow proved he was going to form a floating continent where he would rule with total dominion. He would go around school asking people if they wanted to participate in gladiator matches to the death on his floating continent. He would walk around school with a notepad writing names down of participants and the dates they would fight each other. The floating continent never happened. I'm still waiting for my gladiator match. In due time, my champion. He sharpened his fingernails and grew his hair out. Carried a wooden box lined in red velvet, very nicely made actually, that had several glass vials filled with some red liquid. He told us it was his parents' blood. Whenever someone would mess with him he would start growling and shaking like he was powering up but would then take a quick drink from the vial and would settle down. He said his parents saved our lives once again. I never fricked with him, you know, just in case. He had really long hair and would put makeup on to resemble the Joker, then tell us his was a fictional character he had made. Said he had sex with 7 guys and 7 girls in a hot tub at one time and said he was fine with child prostitution and finally threatened to shoot my school up right after the Colorado theater shooting. His actual name was Raven and would offer to buy your soul for $2. Apparently in middle school my soul was worth some curly fries with cheese sauce at lunch that day. Little did you guys know, Raven would become a famous wrestler. He would regularly beat the crap out of a brick wall because it would strengthen his fists. He wanted to be an assassin. He even tried to move like one. He once asked if someone was sick so he could infect the teachers. He used to draw pictures of him killing classmates brutally, beheadings and crap. He used to hiss at people when they walked past. He was so quiet and his presence made you feel uneasy. Very strange kid. Sadly he died in a flood related accident a few years ago. Fricked up drawings aside, he was incredibly talented. He never hurt anyone, but he definitely had demons. Poor kid. Second kid, his parents are to blame, but frick, they really messed him up. He was so vanilla. He spoke in a monotone voice, dressed like the dads did in Fallout 4, 1940-50s, listened to music on his granddad's old vinyl player, you know the ones with the speaker coming out the top. He sat perfectly upright and didn't move for entire lessons. He wore huge glasses, they were outrageous. His parents banned TV and forced him to listen to the radio in the evenings. I tried befriending him on a few occasions to help him blend but he had no interest in making friends. No one bullied him out of fear, I guess. He seemed like the sort to go home and come back with a blunderbuss if you fricked with him. He had a mind like an 8-year-old. Should not have been in mainstream school. Plus he got caught wanking into a tuba in the music department. Don't talk to me or my tuba ever again. We had a kid who did a lot of weird crap. On his first day of school he stood on the seats giving a rendition of Justin Bieber's Baby for the school to hear. It was his wild claims which were the funniest though. Some of my favorites were his claims to be a wizard, a dragon and the reincarnation of a samurai. Keep in mind this was high school. He was still saying crap like this when he left at 16. One of the kids at my school is obsessed with Tom Brady and Justin Bieber. He will defend them to no end. He even sang Baby in class. He's not an outcast either, but we've determined that he's not being sarcastic. He hissed at me and ran away with his blazer over him like Dracula because he was convinced he was a vampire. Another girl was convinced her uncle was Henry VIII. That's because her aunt had been married 7 times before. Probably when he covered himself in fake blood after taking his shirt off, pulled the fire alarm, and sprinted out the door to climb the tennis court fence and hold himself up in a mock crucifixion. Dude ended up going to RISD. She would pretend to be a cat, like literally pounce on you, meow and running her face along your arms. She also told people that she would stick bottles up her bag. Bit extreme for 13 years old. I know an adult like that. An adult. The cat person, not vagina bottles. There was a guy at my school that had really long greasy hair that had a frick ton of dirty pee fetish knowledge and knew all the words to every Nicki Minaj song. Nice guy all the same. Same though. Not strange, but this girl with anger issues in my 7th grade class punched a pregnant teacher in the stomach. The baby survived and came out fine, but there was a huge shitstorm about it. This kid at year 7 camp, age 13, as a joke thought it would be hilarious to put batteries up his butt in front of everybody in the room, approx 20 other boys. He earned the name Battery Boy and was mocked during the remaining years of high school. He wanted to be Buzz Lightyear. Chuck thought he was KITT, the car from Knight Rider. At first it was Chuck's doing that thing where he's acting like KITT. Then it was, he's been doing it all day and not breaking character. Then it was Chuck has gone to a special school. He used to go round the school collecting dust inside a handkerchief which he kept in his pocket. He wanted to be the first person to build a brick out of dust alone and then eventually build a house. I find this kind of neat. Sure, I would have thought he was batshit crazy when I was a kid though. Now I'm like, frick, that kid was thinking ahead. He was a brony and always sat in the corner playing air drums. It looked incredibly ridiculous, but I fear that he actually thought he was being bad. But oh man, I knew a guy like that, except he was in my first year university class. He was a short, scrawny guy with glasses, and always made it a habit to watch a My Little Pony episode before class started. Also, he only wore My Little Pony t-shirts. The guy was obsessed, and completely normalized his behavior. Poor guy got picked on a lot. Me. I was 5'11" at age 12, with size 10 feet. I was overweight and black in a mostly white school. I got into bondage when I was about 15. I'd talk about it all the time. I'd send nudes for nothing, wrote a lot of homoerotic literature. I was just freaking strange. Your username in that story sent some really confused messages. Probably the fact that he would write boom all over his notes and eventually brought a fake pipperbun to school causing a lockdown. Dude, I think you went to school with Junkrat. In 2nd grade, there was a guy who got 1 out of 10 marks in a test. He jumped on the table and started dancing, and shouted he came first. He was serious. He liked Gwar a little too much. He would bring the masks to school or dress himself as one of the members. 4 to 5 years after we graduated, he ended up lighting himself on fire behind a 7-Eleven by a dumpster and dying. He actually sounds pretty cool. Oh. I could never put my finger on it. It was always a dead behind the eyes look this kid in HS had. Everyone avoided him, and really with no overt reason. He just seemed off, not mentally incapacitated, just wrong. He grew up to sexually assault several 9-year-old girls and is now in prison. Never underestimate the power of a gut feeling about a person, or self-fulfilling prophecies. He was short, had a kind of funny voice and would talk to his mom on his wristwatch back in 1991. He would also make odd comments and talk to himself a lot. One day in the gifted class, as of a creative writing exercise, the teacher told us all our parents had called and all lost our jobs and that we would all to be homeless, and we used to write how we would cope with it. He jumped up crying and ran out of the classroom. He is now a lawyer. My sophomore year in high school, there was this girl who was really into anime. Quite a few people enjoyed anime, but she spent her time drawing her own anime and she really had a thing for Inuyasha. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I upset her during biology class. The bee starts barking and bites my arm. She had some big tea, though. I like how the upside snuck in there at the end. At my high school there was a guy who would act weirdly in the wind. He would basically stand in the playground and gradually start leaning to one side if the wind was hitting him from any direction. Sometimes his feet would remain firmly planted whilst his whole body whirled about at varying speeds, kind of like a wacky inflatable tube man. Other times you would see him spinning and drifting through the fields and we would have to go and rescue him because the wind would be blowing him away. I can picture a time when I was trying to have a conversation with him outside. Little bit of wind and suddenly he was being blown to the left, flailing his arms about like he was in a wind tunnel whilst talking to me like it was a totally normal occurrence. He could also do a pretty accurate impression of a sea lion, but I can't say I remember him doing these at the same time. Other than that though, honestly a pretty okay dude. I think we might have gone to the same school. He'd cry when he got a B+. Kind of just curl up in his chair and sob into his paper. He'd run marathons forever. The guy could run like Gump and if he had to stop he'd cry. He'd cry while running. There is a yearbook photo of him running crying. He also would play drums and fart then cry when people inevitably smelled it and accused him of it. He got picked on a lot as you could imagine, even by me who was by no means a cool kid. Then at graduation I was near him and his father in the crier was telling his father about his achievements. The guy couldn't care less, his son was graduating with a 4.3 or something with all his AP classes. The father was on the phone doing something FBI-ish. He actually was FBI. It all fell together and I felt like a piece of crap. This poor kid just wanted his father to be proud of him. Dang, I'd cry too if my parents ignored me like that on a daily basis. Cool kids don't pick on people. Oh, this one guy I went to school with, I think it was the 8th grade. When asked what he wanted to be when he was all grown up, he told our teacher he wanted to be a hitman. I sat beside that sucker that whole year. Though when I think back on all the strange crap he pulled, I feel like he seemed, or was, strange because that's what he wanted to be seen as. I mean, as long as no one disliked you, he wouldn't be dangerous. In my middle school year in the 90s in Indonesia, we used to hang out at a place near the school to drink or smoking weed. There was one kid that used to hang out there too, that very strange. The way he spoke and conversed was almost like a kid with mental disability. I didn't know how he was allowed to enter normal public school or pass the passing grade qualification. Knowing is Indonesia, probably through bribe. He also had a wild mood swing, usually soft spoken and polite but very scary when he was mad or offended. One time he was so mad to one of my friend he ran home and came back bringing a machete threatening him. And the fact that he liked to smoke kekebang, devil's trumpet datura, didn't help him either. That thing can really mess your brain. He would only wear breakaway or windbreaker pants every day. He would never shave and grow an absolutely disgusting beard. Whenever it was time for lunch or he was in the courtyard, he would park her around the whole school for our enjoyment. One day at a pep rally, he somehow convinced the staff to allow him to do an interpretive dance in pitch black in the gym, wearing some traditional Japanese clothing and holding a giant bow staff with a large blade on the end. Bow staff, and it's in a ginat or guandeo. We were in grade 8, 14 years old. This guy was really obsessed with Power Rangers, which came out when we were 7 or 8 and was well past being an acceptable show to watch. He would spend every recess jumping around yelling zoot, hiya, punching and kicking things with exaggerated movements, and rolling away as if he was hit by the putties. He would play out entire episodes word for word, with all the movements and overacting. The craziest part was another kid started joining in, and for the better part of 6 months, there were 2 Power Rangers fighting evil, playing flutes, and getting their asses kicked by their imagination. Crap was intense. I think that's kind of adorable, really. I knew a girl who would pop her pimples and then taste the pus. Sometimes she would be at the back of the classroom nibbling on staples or pieces of paper. Strange. There was a whole group of them, actually. They wore those super baggy rage pants with the chains. Sometimes the girls had a clip-on furry tail. At least 2 of the boys would full on sprint to each class like the anime run, where their arms are behind their bodies and they run at a sort of angle. But I think the worst part was when I saw one girl just straight up sitting in one of the guys' laps. And this is why I don't usually admit to watching anime. His name was Elijah. He would regularly pee his jeans. He wouldn't go to the bathroom, just stay in his seat and let it flow. He began wearing dark jeans so the pee soak didn't show through as much while standing, but the puddle he left in his chair was enough. Then one day it happened. It was after a fire drill. We came back inside, sat down, and there was the obvious poop smell. There was a small turd in front of Elijah's desk. He said he stepped in dog poo during the fire drill. When he stood up, much more poo came pouring out of his dark jean pant legs. There were shrieks, gagging, laughter, and gasps of disbelief from a classroom full of 5th graders. He was escorted to the nurse. Elijah became known as Poo Pants and went about his scholastic career as such. Anytime there was a bowel or bladder incident, he was first suspect. I think he went into the military. Poor kid, he may have had medical problems. There was a guy who liked caving a lot. I out it in quotes cause he'd get mad if you called it spelunking. He would wear his muddy gear to school. He also frequently put his legs behind his head, just during class, all casual like. He claimed to know karate. Can't neither confirm or deny that, but he brought it up a lot. and one time he got sent to the principal's office for reading a girl's tarot cards while she screamed at him to stop cause witchcraft was evil. In middle school there was a girl who had severe anger issues and threw tantrums at the drop of a hat. Most memorably, she was getting moved to the corner for one such fit and she wouldn't get out of her desk. She was reading a comic and got knocked out of the chair. She didn't want her desk to get moved, so she just kept reading Garfield while hanging onto one leg while the teacher dragged her and the desk across the room. The caving kid actually sounds pretty cool. Wore Jurassic Park t-shirts and sweatpants every day through middle school. During lunch break he would use his hands to dig small holes in the ground looking for fossils. Then he stabbed the bully in the neck with a pencil. He sounds neat. New kid named Robert showed up to school. Very weird. He put his hoodie on over his head and pulled the drawstring so tight there was maybe an inch of space where the opening is supposed to be. Then he tied it in an insane knot and proceeded to flail and freak out. That was actually extremely funny. The teacher was just silent and in awe. Same kid in gym class climbed into the retractable bleachers. The kind that fold into the wall. He somehow wiggled his way through where the step boards would be and snaked his way into the bleachers. It took the coaches like 3 hours to get him out. Same kid brought a steak knife to school and sharpened my pencil with it. He got suspended for that one. Man, now I'm trying to remember some more Robert stories. He would dress in all black and just run everywhere. The kid would fly down 3 flights of stairs and sprint to class down the hallway. It was extremely odd. He made weird screeching noises whilst pretending to be a dinosaur. He would try and run across the walls in drama class. He was so obsessed with wrestling that in college he wore cyberdog clothes and tried to dress like a wrestler, makeup and all. He's now imprisoned for pedophilia. He was placed on the sex offender register when he was 16 but managed to gain access to more kids under his brother's name. It was quite a terrifying case. In my middle school, there was this kid, let's call him Darren, who had no control over his anger, and when he gets mad, he screams at the top of his physical capability. Because of this, the other middle schoolers thought it would be fun to egg him on, which they did on several occasions. Since I don't have much time, I'll limit it to my favorite 3. 1. Darren was playing Nintendo music on his clarinet when classmate Josh decides to insult his playing from across the room. All it took to set him off was, "Darren, you suck at clarinet." Darren immediately targeted Josh and cross-mapped him in the chest with his clarinet like a tribal spear warrior. Josh was absolutely covered in spit from the accurate blow. 2. My Spanish teacher was a thin Venezuelan chick who never taught us anything, and only kept us behaved because of her sexiness. In 8th grade, however, our teacher had gotten comfortable with her new boyfriend, and took the rest of the year off on maternity leave. After this, all heck broke loose. The school tried to fill the gap with a temporary sub, until they could find a more permanent solution. For some reason, Darren thought it necessary to complain to the front office about the substitute, so they found a new one. This happened 3 times, until they finally appointed the permanent sub who was an old, super nanny type lady. She was insanely strict, and would discipline any tapping, scratching, or even farting with a detention. It was a comically horrible situation, and it caused Darren to stand up and throw his desk chair into the whiteboard right before he ripped open the classroom door and unleashed one final scream for the whole school to hear. As soon as he slammed the door behind him, the passing assistant principal began her impressively quick pursuit in 3-inch heels. She snatched his slow butt up real quick. The funny thing about it was, the substitute had no idea that he would snap like that, since he was pretty docile until then. 3. Nearing the end of the year, when I was in language arts class, which was my one class without Darren, my teacher spotted a strange person through the window, walking around outside, for no apparent reason. Guess who? It was Darren. Apparently he just walked out of class because he was done with middle school, which I can understand. Now, it's his senior year in high school. I'm not sure how he's doing since he goes to my rival school now, but from what I've heard, he's calmed down a lot. He's the school's first chair clarinet, and he plays very well, but I still believe that the beast lives within him. He was my partner for a project. He spent all of his time perfecting his hit list of people he hated and showing it to me. This was when Columbine was the only big shooting, so I thought he was just trying to seem cool in his mind to me. I didn't turn him in immediately but was just nice and invited him to hang with my friends at the movies or at the school bonfire and whatnot. I also had weird friends and he actually started to bond with a few of them over video games. He changed his list to a hate list, but kept adding to it. One day this new girl joined our class and got added to our group. She found the list, called the principal and he got suspended. When he got back all his new friends, my friends, were like, no crap dude, you can't do that stuff. Now he's a pretty cool dude. Still a dumb hick in Kansas who posts pics of guns, but what'll you do? I think I was friends with all the weirdest ones, which there are a lot. So you invite them all over to do crap and you got yourself a big ole friend group. We had a kid who would run around and made car noises and hold the hands like he would hold a steering wheel. Doesn't sound so weird, but he didn't play like he was driving, he played like he was the car. We all just thought he really likes cars until one day lunch break was over and every kid went back to class except Carboy Wo couldn't because he drove himself in a corner and didn't get out. Kid screamed at him he should hurry but he simply calmed. He was just standing on one point and said he couldn't get the car out of the corner. Teachers showed up, wanted to move him, but he would just get a really red head and starts crying like he really physically couldn't get out of that corner. That was probably the moment everyone was realizing that he wasn't playing. They had to call the mother and needlessly to say that kid didn't stay long on our public school after this. Did he at least remember to put on his hazard lights? Tom Chow, he couldn't move. Not a very good car as it seems. He knew a bit too much about guns, even offered to name a couple guns that were on a PowerPoint about terrorism. Other than that he was always quiet, never shot up the school though. I feel like just because you know a lot about guns doesn't make you weird. It's a hobby and interest, and if you're American it's even less weird because you can actively engage in this hobby interest. This is kinda awkward. I was that strange kid. I didn't, and still don't, like most other people, so I kept myself to myself. I read books for pleasure, which was odd for a teenager to do at my school. I was depressed and dressed goth to keep people away from me and seem stronger than I felt. I did things to see people's reactions, said and did weird crap out of boredom to see what people would do while at the same time keeping up the appearance of being the unpredictable freak that kept people away from me. I'm nothing like this now though, lol. I grew up, got through my depression and have found the company of just a few close friends more to my liking. I hope you still read since there's nothing wrong with reading, lol. Giselle told us about soft acorns that you didn't have to crack open to eat. She happily dragged us to the corner of the schoolyard, collected some rabbit poop, and popped it in her mouth. In year 7 when I discovered masturbation, late bloomer I know, I used to whip my penis out whilst sitting in the corner and jerk off. Nobody noticed as everyone seems to love me and treat me with respect at school, so I assume no one noticed, otherwise I'd get bullied for life. Anyways, my religion teacher was telling the class secrets about the school and she said do not go mentioning this outside of this class, but there was a year 7 student who used to masturbate during class in the corner. I am 100% she was talking about me and now I am crapping my pants. This was today. I am currently in year 12. You're fricked. Let's call the strange kid Danielle. So this girl had really bad hygiene and throughout all the years in secondary school had a bogey dripping from her left nostril as if it was permanently stuck to her face. So one day I am sitting behind Danielle in assembly and my friend who is sitting next to me says how she always has Ned's head louse. Then, as if to add dramatic effect, as soon as I return my gaze forward again looking at the back of Danielle's head, a freaking wood louse just crawls out and then back into her hair. A freaking wood louse. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.